Hi, I'm Jim Shaw, publisher of the Lexington Times and chairman of the board of LexMedia. I want to welcome you to another segment of Coffee with the Candidates that we produce here at LexMedia. We're so pleased that we're able to put this together to help the people from Lexington to sort of learn more about the candidates that are running for public office, both incumbents and I wouldn't say challenges, other candidates that are running, right? Because you're not necessarily challenging, you're running for a seat.
Exactly.
So I always stumble over that a little bit. But we're so pleased and fortunate in Lexington that we have so many people who are interested in serving our community. And today I'm with Vineeta Kumar. Did I say that correctly?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Vineeta is running for Board of Selectmen. I'm sorry, I can't say that. I keep saying it. I apologize. I apologize. Select Board. I'm an old dog, and you can't teach me new tricks. I'll get it one of these times. At any rate, she's running for Select Board. And a little bit about Vineeta. She may be new to running for elective office, but well, not necessarily. You're in town meeting. You've been in town meeting since 2017. Yeah.
Yes.
So you've been in town meeting, but you've also been very involved in the community. Member of the Lexington Education Foundation Board. Involved with different levels of PTO activities, right up until you were the co-president of Lexington High School.
That's
PTO
right.
During the pandemic?
During the pandemic, yes.
Right, which is a difficult time.
Yes, I just managed to find a lot of positions during the pandemic.
Well, thank God you did. You're also former chair of the TMMA, Town Meeting Members Association.
That's right.
Which is that's a pretty difficult and challenging position. So you're basically taking the 200 plus town meeting members and sort of trying to keep them informed and together and sort of moving as a unit.
Yes, it is. And that was also during the pandemic, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes, it was.
It was a challenging time for all of us, personally, as well as town meeting members, right?
Mm-hmm. And then with the Indian Americans Get Involved effort, that was something that you helped spearhead?
Yes, so I was the president, but I think I was involved beyond the 2 years as a president to champion civic engagement in our town.
Right, more and more people running for town meeting and getting involved in other aspects of the community.
Yes, there was a lot of people are really interested in elected office, and there are people who want to dip their toe and see how they can contribute, and they wanted to maybe join a board or a committee. And so we just educated them on how they can get engaged and how they can, the various levels of engagements and how they can go about it. So it did increase a lot of involvement, which was great.
Well, it certainly has.
Yes.
There's no doubt. It's made a difference.
Yes.
Which is wonderful. You had basically you were a dual MBA in financing and marketing.
Yes.
And marketing management, I should say.
Yes, financial management and marketing management.
And you had a diploma in software programming that you decided to somewhat forego in favor of some of the other stuff.
Yes, I did programming for the first couple of years and realized that I didn't like sitting behind a computer all day coding. So I took on a customer service role and handling customers on a phone. And
interfacing with other people, which is where you belong.
Which is where I realized, and I'm glad I realized that really fast. So.
Great. And then as sort of part of your profession, you were a management consultant in what I have here, creating management opportunities, or how did we say that?
Okay, so management consulting is all about helping Fortune 500 companies. It can be smaller companies too, but in building growth strategies, revenue generation strategies, competitive strategies, expanding service lines, operational efficiency management, risk mitigation as a business, adopting new technologies and digital transformation as it's called now. Basically everything that helps the top line or the bottom line of a company.
Sounds like it would have a lot of application to a town like Lexington.
Absolutely.
The parallels exist for sure.
Absolutely. So revenue generation, if you look at our financial budget, right, with increasing expenditures, with capital expenditures especially, we are at a point where we will see expenses going up. But revenue generation comes after a while. You take on that expenditure first, right? So you start to develop a deficit. And that's what companies deal with as well. How do we continue to grow? And growth means hiring people so they can, service that growth, but you need to generate that revenue, because the other challenge with companies is you also have to be profitable, right? So, and that's the challenge you don't have in a town. It just needs to balance, right? Which is a lesser of a challenge. But organizational efficiencies, what your operating model should be, how do you utilize the resources that you have for the best service for the town.
Right.
How do you plan forward in terms of what's coming down in terms of changes or projects or service needs based on growth. They are completely similar to what happens in business. And then looking for ways to optimize your spend. Where are the opportunities for efficiency creation? They are all very similar to what we do in business. I think it's directly applicable. But at the end of it, also the most important aspect of a business is people. And and we always used to say this, that if you take care of your employees and your people, then they take care of the business, right? And in public service, as long as we're listening to the people and what's important for them, and making changes and developing policies based on that, we will be taking care of everybody and the and the town.
Right. Well, I agree with you. I think it's important to find different ways to different and new ways to raise revenue, ways to run government more efficiently, and to take advantage of opportunities. I remember Norm Cohen, a former member of the Board of Selectmen. He was our general counsel for years prior to becoming a member of the board. But he focused a lot on what you could save with the bond ratings and save the community literally thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars by working and making sure that we had a certain, like for instance, making sure we had the rainy day fund and all of this stuff that really affected our ability to keep the highest bond rating.
I think it was so smart, and I have to say, having run multiple hundreds of millions of dollars in business myself, our fiscal governance is almost impeccable. Our ability to look to the future and say, we see these things coming down the pike, we need to prepare for it. So the creation of the Capital Stabilization Fund, the way we are actually going to meet our obligations on OPEB soon, the reserves that we have in our operating budget, those are signs of a very well-run town, right? It's, I didn't know Norm was the one who did it, but good to know. Norm had a lot to do with that particular situation, and but we were always very fortunate to have Norm. I like to say, when he first ran for the board, he was our town council for probably 30 years, and then he decided he wanted to run and serve on the board. I thought to myself, why wouldn't we hire that person to serve on our board by voting him in, and we'd have all that expertise with us without having to write him the big check. But at any rate, I'm going off on a tangent. So I know we'll probably talk a little bit more about new revenue sources, but when we first started talking before we started taping, you were talking about affordability, and affordability is an important concept. Lexington, people look at Lexington as that may be a bygone of days before. Affordability. Lexington is no longer affordable. You can't afford to buy a home here if you're the average person. Our children are being foreclosed on their future. Will my son ever be able to buy a home here in Lexington? Those are all legitimate discussions. But there are people who are living here now who are facing affordability issues that are really crimping their budgets. Let's talk a little about that. I mean, when you talk about affordability as an important issue in Lexington, what do you mean? I mean both those things. So thank you for saying that, because it's not just, it's not become expensive only for people who want to come and live here, so they can't afford to, make a down payment for the house because our, house prices are so high. Everything is more expensive, right? But definitely housing. It's also become expensive for people who live here. Our young professionals, our children, as you said, they can't afford to live here. I'm hearing a lot more about aging in place from people who live here now, and a lot of people, even professionals in their mid career, are feeling the pinch because our taxes are going up every year, right? And it's not an unprecedented situation, in my opinion. Towns go through growth, and this happens, right? And as I said, we are very well fiscally governed. So we anticipated this LHS project. We created the Capital Stabilization Fund. We have about $48 million in it. So, but we have other projects that will also come up. And we do a smart job also in prioritizing and queuing them up, right? But we, and all of those will have a tax impact. The LHS will have a tax impact. And if we manage this smartly, then the next few projects may not have a tax impact. And I think that's the job for us, is how do we generate new revenue so that all these additional projects can be handled, right? And we can have a balanced budget without going back to the residents and the, in Lexington for additional tax impact, right? If we want to avoid another debt exclusion, or a operating override, right? So, and I feel that there are a couple of things that we can do, right? One, I think we already started. I think I've talked about commercial development for a while now. I feel very strongly about it, and I think with my background, I feel like that's something that I can, lead and create an impact on, right? I think the work that we were doing in the lab space was exactly the way to go. I think it was a fantastic plan, and we couldn't have foreseen the pandemic and the post-pandemic impact of it. So, but we need to now reset that and say, well, if it's not the lab space, then what is it? Is it a tech hub? Is it an innovation hub? Is it an incubator? Is it some other industry? What is it that is rising where the demand in this area could be an opportunity for us? So I think we need to do that study and see how
we have done a lot of incubation. MIT folks that come out along Hartwell Avenue have taken space over the years. It's not huge, but it's there.
Yes, and that's something that we could expand on, because we have a success story there. We've shown that we can be successful in partnering with educational institutions and creating incubation spaces. So I think that's one for sure that we should work on. The second, I think a lot of people don't understand that building multifamily housing actually creates a positive tax impact for people. It spreads the tax, right? And so that's something that obviously through the MBTA zoning we're doing, part of that. But that's something that we should work on beyond with the right zoning changes to see how we can build those multifamily housing where we bring people who are younger, mid-career, early career professionals and mid-career professionals as well. And that will help spread the tax burden a little bit. We can absolutely look at spend optimization. I personally, when I look at our financial budget and all the line items, I couldn't see immediately what I would take away. But and
you're
also
talking about for the town or for your own
for
home?
the town.
For the town.
For the town. Yeah.
I'm going to put you on the spot. What kind of things would you not take away, but what kind of things would you look at in terms of running more efficiently? So,
I think services that could not create a visible impact. And for example, I believe that we service our roads at a certain level right now. And if we lowered that a little bit, it may not create puddles that we can't handle, but it will lower the cost a little bit. Spend optimization has impact on service, right? And there's certain services that we should not touch, right? So when I looked at our line items, I couldn't immediately see something that stands out as, oh, why do we need this? Let's drop this or kill it. I don't see that, but I do see that we have been putting money aside in our OPEB fund, for example. Can we divert some of that to things that maybe need to be prioritized now, so we don't fill that completely by 2030 as planned or earlier? I don't recommend it, and I think these are measures we should take only if we are heading towards an operating override, right? But I think it's always a good idea to look at ad spend and see, is there an opportunity there, right? And I'm not saying that our town is not doing that. I think, as I said, we are a very efficient town, and we are very
we
smart.
have been. I can't remember the last time we had an operating override election.
2008, 6.
It was a long time ago.
A long time ago,
right?
yes.
And the debt exclusion obviously is a requirement because we're going out to bond on some of this big buildings. So that's not. It's not like we're choosing to do that. We need to do that.
We absolutely need to do that. And I think, policy and best practices say that large capital projects should be funded through debt.
Right.
And most towns don't have this kind of money in their operating budget to be able to do it within their operating budget. So it's the right way to do it.
Great.
Right.
So let's explore the MBTA. The housing policy that was sort of the mandate sent down by the state. We accepted it in 2023. We were the first, I believe, the first community in Massachusetts to accept it based on an article in the Boston Globe. That's my source.
Yes.
Although I think there were a lot of proud people around Lexington that were happy to sort of be the first one out. But in their eagerness to sort of get it on the books and be the first.
Yes.
I wonder if they acted too hastily without really looking at it, because the mandate was to set aside 50 acres. They've set aside well over 200 acres.
Yes.
And the result, I don't think anybody anticipated this.
Agreed.
The result was that so many people went to identified potential development sites, acquired them, put their applications in, and now we're looking at applications for over 1,100 units of housing that are basically accepted. If we were to stop doing it today, or they're going to amend it, Article 2 coming up in I think March 17th.
Yes.
We still have to deal with the by right applications of the 1,100 units that are already in place. So we have to deal with that. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, in terms of, did we act too fast? Did we overextend by adding additional acreage to it? I mean, hindsight is 20/20.
Yes.
I'll give you that. And everyone, but I know there were certain people concerned about it when it came up initially in town meeting. But town meeting decided they were just going to go, they rejected the amendment at the time that would have reduced the amount of acreage. But at any rate, where do you come down on all of this? I mean, you were in town meeting when they voted it. So tell me how you dealt with it.
I remember that
how
day.
You see it.
It's so I actually voted against it on Article 34, and the reason for me was that I wanted to see more scenarios, best case, worst case scenarios. It's the management consulting brain. When you're looking at projections and something that could have such significant impact, then you build scenarios. And I'm not saying that we didn't. We did do a projection. The planning board did do a projection. And again, projections are based on variables and factors that, some of them you don't have within your control, and some of them you can go wrong on, right? And it can create a skew. So, and that's what happened for us. I think we probably didn't consider the how coveted a market we are and how developers would jump for this opportunity, especially because we've had restrictive zoning for such a long time, right? So, perhaps, all those good reasons, right? But that was the thing for me was, I didn't feel like I heard enough in that session in terms of best case, worst case scenarios, what factors, and what the skew could be, right? So I was not convinced. And we also had 1.5 years at that point of time. This was April 2023. The deadline was December 2024. So I decided to vote against it. And I actually, if I remember correctly, I voted against every amendment as well, because I just felt that was not the right time to do it.
Right.
Whatever the format, right? Unless it was probably just about 50 acres, because that was a requirement. But I would still say take the time you have to evaluate it and all that.
Well, there were a lot of people who voted for the amendment, and that failed, and then they voted for the actual original.
Yes.
Um,
I can't speak to
article.
everybody's logic.
Oh, I know you
but
can't,
yes.
but it's like, you have the courage of your convictions, I guess. But,
Yes.
As you obviously do.
Thank you. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's very important to think independently based on the training you have, and be able to explain it, right? So it's been important for me for every vote in town meeting to say, well, how am I going to explain this?
Right.
Why this vote? And so now, of course, as you said, the response has been unprecedented. Nobody could have foreseen it. And while it's great, it shows how amazing we are as a town. Everybody wants to come here and build here, but obviously creates a problem for us.
We are a community, I think, predisposed to creating housing opportunities. It's
Yes.
It's just like you say, how do we do that? How do we get there in a
Yes.
way that makes sense for our community?
Absolutely. I think smart, manageable growth is what we should try to do. I don't think we should get too emotional about these things. I think we should definitely keep the head and the heart both in the right place on something like this.
Right.
So now that we have the situation with 1,100 dwelling units in the mix, and I think 5 of those applications have been approved now and 4 are in the process, right? We have
Something
this,
like that, yeah.
and then so I think 615 or 685, one of those is the number of units that has been approved in terms of applications. Only one
Right.
has broken ground now, and on Bedford Street.
Right.
So
But
again,
there's no indication that the others will not be approved because,
Yes.
it's all by right and
Yes,
they've met
exactly.
the deadlines and all of that, so.
there is no indication on whether they will be approved or not. We have to assume they will be.
Right.
And we also don't know, we can't project and say whether they will be built or not. We have to assume that they will be built, right? Until though, and this is again my business brain saying that unless the builders reach a point of diminishing returns, right? They say, well, the market is saturated. This is not the year for me to build. So even though I have put in my application, maybe I'll wait, right? So we will reach that point, and I don't know. I haven't done the analysis. I don't know what that point is going to be.
Right.
So, and I feel that in something like this, we should err on the side of caution, and because we're talking about people and their lives and livelihood, and people are already concerned about high taxes, and not having a balanced budget is not a great management style, in my opinion.
Right.
So. And therefore, I commend the people who actually decided to work on a solution, because when you see a problem, you try to see how do we, solve for it, right?
Right.
So I really commend, Carol Sassadote and John Bardenstein and Alan Levine for working on it. And I think it's going through the process that it should go through. The
A lot of
public
people
input.
talking about their work, their research should look at the impact of this, and it's resonating.
It is, and the Appropriation Committee also published their report recently, and it validates that, if it, and the thing is, we don't have control, it's by right development. So we don't have control on any of these factors.
Right.
So, so we have to assume that development will happen, and therefore it can put us in a very terrible situation. So to that extent, coming up with Article 2, I think is a great idea, and I really commend anybody who thinks solution rather than let's talk about the problem.
Right.
And I think it has to go through the public input process. I think it's getting expert input from the planning board as well, which I think is obviously very important in the process that we have in our town, and also because zoning and these changes are very complex areas.
Well,
So-
I do understand, when the governor and the legislature, teamed up to come up with this program, and Michael, the former secretary of Economic Affairs and Housing from Lexington, he helped drive this issue. He spoke at town meeting. But I think where they were a little bit short-sighted, and this is, I'm not talking about the secretary himself, but maybe the overall policy itself, not providing room for mitigation or other things, because there's a mandate to meet this housing, the 50 acres, 15 units per acre.
Yes.
So there was a certain standard they wanted in terms of a minimum amount of housing.
Yeah.
For Lexington, it was over 1,000. So we're not far away from where the state wanted us to
Yes.
be.
Yes.
So let's be honest about that.
Yes, absolutely.
Because we are meeting what they wanted. So it's not like we're coming up short, and we're coming just a little over that.
Yes.
It's the concern we have about where we go if we can go much further. But it didn't come. It just came as a sort of a straight mandate with no flexibility to negotiate any kind of mitigation for the effect it will have on cost, whether it's the schools, whether it's public safety, whether it's the roads.
Absolutely.
And so we have to make sure going forward that it works for Lexington.
Yes.
At all levels.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
I would have said exactly that.
Yeah.
I agree with
I don't know.
it.
Sometimes I go off on these tangents and I just
No, you are not on a tangent. It's exactly
but I
true.
keep reminding people I'm not running for anything. I'm just a guy here talking to people who are. So
Yes.
at any rate, and it's Michael Keneally, by the way. I don't know
Yes,
why.
I was gonna say
know
that.
I know the name like I know my own, and I know Trish Keneally, and it just wasn't coming to my tongue. So if Michael, if you're watching this, my humble apologies. At any rate, so we've talked a little bit about that, and I get the sense that you're a compassionate person who really does want to sort of live up to our responsibility to provide housing for folks, that it's either affordable or attainable. There are different definitions of whether this is truly affordable.
What is affordable?
What is affordable?
Yes.
We know we're making a certain percentage of it affordable.
Yes.
My big concern, obviously, is the disparity between home ownership and rental.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
like 85% is rental.
Rental. Yes.
And we're not really creating home ownership opportunities that are affordable. But hopefully we'll learn from this as we go forward.
Yes.
So now, but people were talking about it as a sort of a side effect of all of this. We're going to have extra students. We're going to grow a school population. It only makes sense that there's
Yes.
going to be a certain amount, and I think it was John Bartenstein's study that finally put a number on that or something. There were around 200 and something students. I hope I said that correctly.
Yeah, I think so.
So I don't want to go down the same avenue we went down to several years ago, when this building that we're in, this whole
Yeah.
development
Yeah.
was built. They were off by a considerable number, the number of students that would be coming into the public schools.
Yeah.
So hopefully they're using an equation and a formula that will help them come up with an accurate number, because it has to have some effect. So with that, we need to know when we're building a new high school, are we building it the way we need to build it in anticipation of these additional students? So the high school project is here, and I know that falls mostly under the purview of the school building
Yes.
committee and somewhat the school committee and the planning board. But you guys will have a say on it. And
Yes.
Where do you come down on the high school? I mean, do you have any particular position that you've carved out on it?
Yes.
Okay.
I do, and I completely agree that MBTA zoning, even after Article 2, with a reduced rate, will have an impact on school enrollment, and right. And again, if we err on the side of caution, we know it's going to be higher. On Bloom, the plan that we have currently,
Right.
I am actually have stated my position. I am in favor of moving forward with it, and the reason I'll tell you. One is, it's a project I feel is like past overdue or 10 times, right? And the condition is not only not conducive for learning, it's also unsafe, right? I think it's a significant impact on our seriousness as Lexington about our educational excellence, right? It's a reflection on whether we prioritize this or not, right? And we've gone through a long process in coming to this plan, right? I feel in terms of capacity, and not even going into the fact that it's ready, it's prime, it can start if things are lining up. It's got everything that MSBA wants. It meets our educational plan. It's got all the safety numbers. It's got it's a check box, check on every box.
Right.
the fact that any other plan, right, would actually set us back by I don't know how many years, right? And that, if you remember, time is money, right? You set a project like this of this size back by a few years, right? And we don't control MSBA, right?
Even a few months for that matter.
Yes.
Yeah, I know where you're going to go with this, but go ahead.
Yes, so the cost is never going to be less than what it is right now.
Right.
Now, it's going back to capacity, which was your question. At 85%, it is at $2,395. At 100%, that is about $2,800. With the flexibility built into it, very smartly through the central office and other measures, it's going to go up to over 3,500, I believe. So, and we are currently at 2,405.
Right.
That gives us about 1,500 additional students, right? I think it's great capacity for now, and with our efforts towards curtailing this MBTA zoning growth, I think we will be exactly fine and still have spare capacity. Now, that is my confidence based on what I know, and we can run the numbers, and we can. I think
and it's
we'll
hard
be
to
close.
do this because I'm asking you to do an exercise where we really just don't know the numbers.
Yeah.
We're just sort of we're coming up with projections that may or may not be close to the mark, but I appreciate you at least making that effort.
Yes, and also, I think we have been clear, and I trust experts in this area, right? The school committee, the school building committee, the superintendent of schools has said that building a high school of a capacity greater than 3,500 is not a good idea anyways, right? So, I think all facts considered, what we have right now is a great plan. I feel very strongly about the reputational risk that we face if we start to deprioritize the high school. And so much in our town, in our reputation as a place of great educational excellence and our, how we prioritize schools, I think it'll take a hit if we start, kicking this can further down, because there could be a perfect plan every day of the week from somebody else. Right.
And it is absolutely true that there's no guarantee that the Mass School Assistance, the School Building Assistance Fund is going to continue to have money set aside for us. So if we miss an opportunity, we miss an opportunity.
If I was MSBA and they realize that after going through this entire process and we start second guessing our plans, they would probably not even take us seriously and they would go to other schools. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we've pretty much run out of time. I want to thank you. I wish we could talk more. I've enjoyed this. You've shared a lot of information with us about some of your ideas and thoughts, and I hope people will take what you're saying under consideration while they're sort of thinking about who they'll vote for on Election Day. March 3rd, right? And so I want you to let people know about where they can find out more. I'm sure you have a website.
Yes, I do.
All right. And
First of all, thank you for hosting me. Yes, I have enjoyed this conversation as well and could continue for a long time.
I could
but
too.
Yes, the election day is March 3rd. It's a Monday. And my website is vineetaforlexington.com. And I hope to earn your vote on March 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
All right.
Jim.
I've enjoyed it.